Board on this computer. There we go. So welcome everybody. I'm happy to be here today to start the presentation of our second artist talk. And today it will be all about creativity. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But as I mentioned, we're recording the session, and so that anybody else who wasn't able to make it to the meeting today or to our talk today will be able to listen in and watch the recorded session. I would also like to start by respectfully acknowledging the territory of the Sooke First Nation on whose land we gather in celebration of the arts. So today's talk is going to be about exploring different ways to express creativity, creating what you know, what you're passionate about, and do it for your own happiness. And to give us that background and that information, I'd like to introduce Catherine Fraser. Catherine has painted professionally since 1983, it says here, with art studios in Victoria and the Cowichan Valley on Vancouver Island. She works in multimedia and is constantly exploring and experimenting with new artistic responses to the world. Catherine has a love of nature and plein air painting using oils, watercolors, and acrylic paints. She's an accomplished and award-winning artist, having exhibited in over 35 one-woman shows, including most of the Sooke Fine Art shows that have been gone on in the past years. Catherine's work is inspired and informed by an interest in color, design, and exploring inner and outer sacred space. So welcome, Catherine. If you'd like to say a few words while I get the screen sharing all set up, we can get going with that.
All right. So welcome, and I'm excited to be here today to talk about a little bit about creativity and some of the processes that inspire me and that I'm involved in. I also love the topic of creativity, and probably I think one of my goals and roles in life is to enhance other people's and broaden the view of creativity. So, for example, I think people just think of creativity as painting or making art. I mean, it can be everything from cooking to enjoying a beautiful sunset or a sunrise, noticing the spirit in another person, using materials and doing everything, you know, drawing, painting, sculpting, writing, poetry, and playing. I think playfulness is a big part of creativity, and I think children spontaneously know about play usually, and as adults we tend to dampen that down as we get older. And so I think that remembering to have fun and being playful is also a big part of creativity. And as an art therapist, I've also been interested in the role of creativity. So as an art therapist, I allow people to use different materials, starting with pencils and pastels and chalks and paints and clay, and go from sort of tight materials to looser materials, and then people usually find something that they feel an affinity towards or enjoy working with. And often people create things that they didn't know that they were capable of creating as well in that process. But the important thing is the process and not necessarily the end product. It's nice that you know what you like to do, and you like what you've got in your mind, but it's not a prerequisite to creativity. So that's one aspect of creativity. And the other is the more fine art of creativity, and knowing how you handle the materials and knowing how to use those materials, creating a work of art. So it's very, very broad, the topic of creativity. So what I would like to do, first of all, is to find out with the people that are viewing what excites them and what they're interested in. And if you have a piece of your own work, to share a piece of that work as well. And then I will also share some of the work and some of my passions with regards to the creativity and carry on talking about different materials.
Catherine, since we've got the two people with us, would you prefer that I just unmute them and we can have a conversation as we go along?
Yes, certainly.
Okay. So let me just see what I can do here. I may have to stop the share for a moment just so I can do that. Okay, and I'll unmute Elaine. I'll unmute Shayna. And there we go. So you should both be You should be unmuted now, Shayna. Or maybe Shayna, have you muted on your end and you need to unmute yourself? Yeah, we can't hear you.
There.
There we go.
Okay.
There we go. So let me go back into sharing the screen, and I will also put you on gallery view if that's okay, and that way we get to see everybody. Let me go right over to here. I want to share this screen. And share. Now we can see Shayna, so it should be everybody down the side.
Oh,
so.
I can't see you. I had you all on gallery view, but now I can't see you. So
Okay, let me try that again one more time.
there, that works. Right there works.
So
Yeah.
now we're on gallery view, but then you can't see what we've got going on to share. Maybe
We don't need to yet if we're
We don't
talking.
need-
Well,
Okay, go ahead then, and if we're talking, then you can let me know and I'll.
Mhm.
Yeah.
okay. Is there anything else I want to say about myself? I don't think so. It'll probably evolve as we're talking.
Okay.
All right.
Do you want to restate your question? That was a whole minute ago.
If you can introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about what inspires you about creativity, and whether there's any kind of media or medium that you work in that you like, and if you have an image of it that you'd like to share, that would be wonderful. And then any books or authors or artists that inspire you. That's kind of a lot of.
That is a lot.
So let's just start with the introduction and where you're coming from in terms of your creativity and art.
Who wants to jump in?
Okay, I will.
Okay.
It's interesting because I am not an artist. I'm interested in art, and you know, I'm an amateur of just, you know, I dabble. But what initially interested me in terms of art was working with young children. For a big chunk of my life, I was involved in early childhood education, basically in daycare. And as time went on, I ended up teaching at a high school where we actually had a play school program as part of a program to teach high school students how to care for children and get daycare worker certification. And this is just an observation that I just want to share this with you, Catherine, because I think you would be interested in it. I had high school students who were from low socioeconomic backgrounds. They'd come from very tough situations in terms of parenting. And it was interesting watching these students working with, you know, 3 to 5-year-olds and wanting to take over the art projects that the children were doing and show them how to do them perfectly, you know, so that there was a beautiful product at the end. And the interesting thing was watching these high school students being quite proud of what they were able to produce, but not recognizing that they cut the children out of the whole picture and left the children sitting there, you know, being shut down. So what we did with that is had a separate class in a lecture time where what I did was I gave the students an art project to do, but I told them exactly how to do it. And then I told them who'd done it best. And it was interesting watching their reaction because they got really angry, you know, because I was directing everything and I was, you know, judging them. And then when I switched it over and then gave them other materials and said, okay, now do whatever you want, it was really interesting to see what happened with those students, you know, in terms of their mood, their engagement, and their pride in what they were doing. And it was just a really interesting, you know, observation on what we do to children as they get older, as you said, to kind of tamp that down in them, that whole, you know, creative thing that we have going from the time we're born, but we lose it along the way. So it's really interesting to hear somebody like you talk about how does somebody like me now tap into, you know, becoming creative again, you know, because I was at one point in time, but that's a long time ago now. And it's interesting because I have been, you know, struggling with this lately, you know, when people say, well, you need to get creative, and you think, okay, just exactly how am I going to do that? So that's why I'm here. That's, I'm really interested in what you have to say.
Mm-hmm. So I think that there's a variety of comments that I'd like to make in terms of those children that you were talking about and observing how they behaved with the younger children. That's probably what they learned from their own parents, their own.
Yeah.
So they were just behaving in the same way that they were taught. So they probably were ignored, or they weren't encouraged, or whatever. Generally speaking, with creativity, it seems that people who have been creative as a child and they were considered good, then you continue to do it into adulthood. If you weren't encouraged, or you didn't think you were very good at it, you tend to leave it around the age of 10 is when your image making in your mind is very clear and very fertile. And then when you become 10, around to age 10, I think the abstract reasoning takes over, and mathematics and other ways of viewing the world. And so you get more focused on that aspect. And so you'd leave the image making behind. The good news is, as an adult, you can sort of catch up. So if you left off when you were age 6, 7, 8, 10, then when you start as an adult, it may look very childlike when you start, but you can actually move forward in a progressive way that works well. So I think the important thing is to be kind and patient with yourself and not judgmental, and just allow yourself to use different materials. So I encourage people to use sketchbooks, any kind of sketchbook. I have ones that I've liked that are favorites. Some of them, one was a Japanese one that folded in and had a little pocket, and I've never been able to find that again. There's ones that are bound and ones that are coiled. There are hardcover, softcover sketchbooks, and they have them. I think we're really lucky in Victoria because of the Bateman Center. They have sketchbooks there that you can get. They also have promotions for getting back into nature for children and for adults, and so that's some aspect. So finding out also what your passion or interest is. You were telling me a little bit about you had an interest in children and early childhood education, and that it's been a while since you've done the art. So if there's some area, whether it's people, whether it's nature, whether it's travel, whether it's plants, whether it's food, whatever it is you're familiar with in your environment, they say it's really important to paint what you know and what you're familiar with and what you're passionate about. So would there be something that you can think of that would be useful in that way for you, or ideas?
Well, I mean, I like, attempting to do landscapes and nature and, things like that. The thing that I find really holds me back is that whole idea of it doesn't look as good as it should, or I get hung up on details. And then I get lost in the whole thing, because I get started really well, and I get all excited about it and the paint and all the rest of it. And then I kind of get myself sucked into it so that I sort of lose that free sense, that sense of, being, just satisfied doing rather than, thinking about what the end product's going to be. The very thing I was trying to teach my students, I haven't been able to achieve, which is really quite funny. But, that's where I got hung up. But I have got a book here called The Creative Artist. And she gives a lot of different ways that you can try to free your creative spirit by try this and try that. And as you said, all these different mediums that you can use, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to not just use acrylics, but I'm trying to use the like the colored pencils, and I'm trying to just use drawing. And I've got some sketchbooks, and I always start out great, but then it just sort of fades out. So how do you actually keep this going, I guess, is what I'm interested in.
Okay, so can you hold that thought and we'll carry on with the introductions and come back?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Nice to meet you again.
Thank you.
So I'm Shana, and so I've had time to listen and think about, I wasn't sure I was going to be participating in this, so I'm sort of off guard, but when I think about my childhood, I always had this desire to make stuff, and I was always experimenting. One of my first memories was actually making a house, like a little log cabin out of spaghetti noodles, not cooked, and then having my father I left it on the chair and he sat on it. So it was a lesson in impermanence. But I was also, as a kid, was a horse nut, and read all the horse books and looked at pictures, and I used to draw horses. To this day, I'm pretty good at drawing horses. But anyway, aside from that, I always had the desire to make stuff. So right now I do a lot of fiber stuff. So knitting, quilting, felting, dyeing, and knitting is sort of like a go-to thing when I don't know what else to do, but it's becoming a little bit more of an interest. So I have that part of me, and I'm also really interested in like the 2D art, drawing and painting. And like Elaine, I had the same thing. I wanted to get into a drawing practice, like a meditation practice, not to produce beautiful works, but just to draw regularly. And I really had a hard time kind of getting started with it. But I have a couple of things I've learned. I like structure, and I like to make, I don't do things because they get too complicated. I think I have to do everything all at once. So I'm taking this drawing course right now, and it breaks things down into simple things. So I'm only doing outlines, working on outline, or then another lecture would be on a composition. And I find that I can just get into that practice if I don't have a lot of expectations about producing. I'm learning something. So that works for me, is when getting excited about a new idea or learning something new, learning a skill without kind of getting all caught up in the outcome of it. So yeah, so that's working for me right now. But I'm really interested in ideas and how to make ideas happen. And I've been working with myself about, I get ideas all the time about all kinds of things. And I talk to myself and I go, okay, so this is a great idea. Are you enjoying the idea, or do you really want to make it happen? Because it's okay to just enjoy the idea and not feel that you have to do anything with it. So I'm kind of differentiating with myself about, so I don't get overwhelmed by the ideas that come in. I get flooded with them about, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. I don't necessarily want to do all of that. I just want to enjoy some of the ideas and do something. So doing something and getting into the idea. So any ideas about how to keep it up, you know, like, because like Elaine was saying, getting started. I can't tell you how many sketchbooks I have that have 3 pages done in them, you know, and I have different sizes and that, but I never, like, did I ever finish a whole sketchbook, you know, and it's just ideas in there, but something stops me sometimes.
So thank you for sharing that. What came to my mind when you were talking about your interest with fabric and materials and the different ways that you go about looking at the world is our connection to our hands, and our hands are connected to our heart, and getting that flow going. And so there's a woman called Florence Kane, who was an educator years ago, who did warm-up exercises. And she used to suggest that you move your arms around and you move your body around and you warm yourself up before you even plunge into whatever art activity you're doing. So sometimes that will help in terms of freeing you up to get you going in terms of approaching your book. The other is the trauma or the fear of the blank page or the white page or the non-started page, and well, how do you overcome that aspect of it? And so some people will just do free flows and making marks, whether that's a scribble mark, whether that's a shaded mark, whether that's a interrupted mark, with different kinds of marks. So do a warm-up. That's another way of doing a warm-up. You can do it on newsprint or regular paper, and then that sometimes gets the creative juices going as well. And so there are many different approaches and many different ways of going about it. So I'm happy to talk about that as well. today. So some of the, I was also thinking in terms of sources of inspiration. Are you better working by yourself, or are you better working with a group of people and getting feedback? And so there's many more opportunities these days with Zoom and online. One of the inspirations for me that's been really fun has been a conference call that I have about people that are passionate about the island of Iona in Scotland. And you'll see some of the images that I've done, but I'm doing intuitive drawings. So I just start on the corner of a page and then start drawing. And I tease out themes and ideas during the conversations, and I have a completed picture at the end of the conversation, which is an hour and a half. And so that's something that I'm doing that's been really, really fun for me since COVID started in March. So we've been doing it weekly. As I say, I'm a proponent for sketchbooks, although you say you have many sketchbooks and some of them are blank. The pages are, many pages are blank. Deciding what size you like, whether you want, you know, smaller or medium or larger sketchbooks, finding one that feels compatible and comfortable is also important. Some people will used to go to restaurants or go outside and take their sketchbook with them and draw in their sketchbook and make that a daily practice. Some people will do a meditation first and then do their drawing after that. And sometimes that's a way of getting yourself kick-started as well in terms of focus and settling down to a rhythm that brings out the creativity, because we can be so busy with ideas or so busy with activities or so busy with interruptions, we don't get to do the creative part. That sometimes happens a lot, particularly more for probably women than men, I'm not sure. But so there's always tasks to take care of, and so allowing yourself, carving out that time. It doesn't have to be a large out of time, but just sort of making a commitment that you're going to do that. I remember Robert Ginn was talking about art making, and he advised for people that are wanting to be artists or wanting to be creative to just for 1 year commit for 1 year that you're going to do your art making and see where it goes. And it may go in directions you don't know that they're going, or it may go in other directions, but so that's for people that are kind of motivated and self-initiated, and maybe those that aren't, but by making that commitment and doing that. Other people like to take classes, and we're really, again, lucky here in Victoria. Sometimes I just will go to the art gallery for inspiration. I went there the other day, and they had the room where they have the multimedia shows that was about children and art, and it was about you can make art. And they have a National Film Board series for children, designed for children and adults, where you can go to see online these films and get idea. The one that they had there that particular day was about trees, and to sit down and draw a tree from memory, and then to go outside and look at a tree and then draw the tree and then go back again and draw it from memory. So that was kind of an interesting process. And so something like that maybe pique your imagination. And then seeing other people's art. So some artists you may get excited about. An artist that I've been really interested about lately has been, his work is in the collection. There's 40 of his pieces, and he uses meditation and has the Buddhist philosophy and the Baha'i faith philosophy, and that's how he did his work. And I've been very interested in his work lately, and I've just lost his name. It'll come back to me. And so, and the other artist, I flew to Seattle to go to the retrospective show of Andrew Wyeth, and went down in December on a snowy day and flew down, and it took 20 minutes to go down, and then I was there for 2 hours, and was just so excited. I love seeing the original work because I've got many of his books, and then I ended up watching the people look at the artwork, which is interesting. And same with the Sooke Fine Arts. It's very interesting watching people look at the work as also absorb the work and so on, and share the work. And so that can be a source of inspiration as well. I think that what else did I want to say about that? Oh, in Victoria, we have different art schools, design schools, and the Vancouver Island School of Art has courses for beginners and courses for people that are more experienced, or all levels of people in the same class. So it's really fun you can be a seasoned artist or you can be a beginner artist, and we all can share and cross-pollinate ideas, and that can be really stimulating if you find it's hard on your own to generate that activity. For me personally, I've been fairly motivated on my own, but I get tired of doing it by myself all the time. I usually paint late at night till the early hours of the morning, but it's nice to be able to share with other people and have conversations and see what their ideas are and what they're interested in. So, so tell me a little bit about the artists that you know about, or artists that you enjoy. Is there anybody?
Well, I'd
I
have
can't
trouble
think of any.
remembering names, actually.
Just
So,
like I just did.
I downloaded an app some time ago called Daily Art, and the nice thing about that is I do get a piece of art each morning, you know, when I fire up my iPad, and you know, it's for pieces throughout time and from all over the world. And you know, the nice thing about that is I get to, you know, enjoy that piece of art, see what they've written about it, but then I can go further. If I'm really interested in that piece or that particular artist, then I can find out more. And that's really been helpful, actually, in terms of, you know, stimulating a lot more interest in art itself, and in wanting to do some things myself too. So, you know, that's really, and the reason I downloaded that, I think, was getting involved with the art show in Sooke in the first place. Because as you said, I think you're far more inspired if you're seeing art all the time. And I always had an interest in doing art myself, but I wasn't surrounded by it. So, and of course, you know, the fact of being retired certainly helps, having a bit of time on your hands. But certainly the Sooke Fine Art Show has actually done a lot for me in terms of, you know, stimulating everything to do with art. So, but to name specific artists, I would have difficulty with that, because there's a lot of different things that I like. And, you know, I like, you know, traditional classical things, but I also like a lot of the abstract and, you know, new things that are going on, and a lot of the new techniques that are being used. You know, that's very exciting. So, yeah, that's just, you know, sort of where I'm at anyway.
Okay, great. Well, you did actually share a book that stimulates your creativity. So that's great. Thanks for sharing that.
And I would say I've been involved in the Sooke Fine Art Show on the design team, and also as an exhibitor probably for 10 years now. So it's always been a highlight of what I look forward to in the summer, in terms of spending lots of time at it and being involved with a team of people. I mean, setting up the art gallery itself, which I'm missing a lot this year, is a work of art in itself. To me, it's like designing a quilt. You have all these elements and you got to put them together. You've got all kinds of ideas, and putting it together so it makes everything look better than it would by itself, in a way, and then doing that in a collaborative way with other people. One of the programs that I took a number of years ago is called the Painting Experience. I don't know if you know about the Painting Experience, which is just really that creative process, not focused on product, but focused on the process of creating whatever comes, you know, and just allowing that to happen. I find that was a very, very helpful program. And what was really good about it too is use tempera poster paints, so not expensive equipment and not expensive paper, so you can just go for it as big or as small as you want to. So, and that was a local program as well at the time. So I really enjoyed that. But I love all different kinds of art.
Yes.
You know, I can't think of one particular artist that comes to mind. And I've traveled a lot too. So we always, when we're traveling, go to art galleries and museums and whatever we can, and just absorb as much as possible. I must have like 10,000 photos on my iPhone of art that I've, you know, been inspired by. That I mean to go back and look at, but there's a limit.
Yeah. So I really hear that you're both art lovers and you love being in the milieu of creative artists. And so that's great. I'm glad that you have that opportunity. And I love how you do transform that arena into this amazing space. Yeah. So the artist that I was trying to get the name of is Mark Tobey. And he was from Seattle, the Pacific North Coast. And he used to love to come to Victoria as well. All right, so let's go. I'll share with you a few books that I just wanted to share with you. In terms of experimental or experiential art that Elaine, you were mentioning, Maxine Masterfield does a book called The Spirit of Experimental Art and Painting the Spirit of Nature. And so if you're wanting to experiment in that way, you can see she does sand paintings, charcoal paintings. She does what are called solar paintings and many other kinds of ways of using materials so that you can create a painting. And she's also the founder of the International Association for Experimental Art.
Can you say her name again?
Yes, certainly. Maxine Masterfield. And her books
you.
were probably written in the 90s, early 90s. Did you need me to repeat that again?
The names of the books, please.
Spirit of Experimental Art and Painting the Spirit of Nature.
Spirit of Experimental Art and Painting
The Spirit of Nature.
Okay.
And Virginia Cobb. She wrote a book called Discovering the Inner Eye, Experiments in Water Media. And her book was produced in 1988. So it's out of publication, but you can get copies secondhand. And I loved it. She gave a wonderful example of a group of people going out in nature, and this happened to be in a sand dune. And in the sand dune, everybody, there was a photographer, there was, and people who did different types of art. And they came back and shared what they did that day. And some people look at the minute details, some people look at the whole picture. And so it just reminds me that it's wonderful to see what people's perspective are. And when you share in that way, for me, I notice things that I wouldn't normally notice. And I really enjoy that as well, and appreciating our individual differences. And the other artist is Heather Spears, who's a poet, author, and writer. And she has a wonderful book about drawing. And I'd highly recommend it. She has, it's called The Creative Eye. And the book is about how the brain influences drawing and creativity. And there's illustrations with it. And also some wonderful activities. And it's beautifully written. There's lots of quotes of poetry and narrative and everything that I've enjoyed very much.
Spears is spelled S-P-E-A-R-S or I-E-R-S?
E-A-R-S.
Okay, thank you.
The other things that I was drawn to initially, because I didn't know whether there would be children at this presentation, our inner child are all here, but one was called by John Woolsey, W-O-S-E-L-E-Y, and friend and artist is Jill Ellert, and she was talking about his kids' home publishing. And that was fun to learn about his work. And so he has a video called This Is How I Start a Lot of Paintings. So if you're into starts, that's probably, and he also is very big on having fun. And he talks about graphite rubbings and he talked about bugs, because kids often like lots about bugs and dinosaurs and things. And he talks about frottage or rubbing on trees and different things. Anyway, that was fun. And then, as I say, you can make art by the National Film Board. I haven't seen all of the series. I've only seen one. Anyway, those are some of the things, and there's many other things. If you're interested in coloring and also doing something that's a little bit different, and I'll show you some examples of that in my presentation, is by Deborah Kopp Chapin. And I'm not sure how you flip this here.
No, we can see it if you hold it up.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And she's, it's called Touch Drawing, a Guiding Experience. So you use a board that's is resistant to the paint going through the board, and you put water mixable oils on it. You use a roller and rub it, and then you put paper on top and you draw with your hands. So the other thing is that's fun too is knowing that there's many different kinds of tools in terms of making art. So you can use your hands, you can use sticks, you can use many different things to make marks and do mark making. And I think, Shana, the group that you were talking about also would be exploring many different ways of making marks as well.
Yes.
And so she has coloring books that are, and cards, and this is called Listening Within. And so there's some of her drawings that are black and white, and you can color them. And then there's people all over the world that send in the colored images of what they do to the drawings, from Japan to North America and so on. So, and then there's 5 of them, and this one's called The Fullness of Life. And so that's another way of expressing yourself. What else did I have in my mind? Maybe what I can do is, Ness, do you have any questions so far?
Can I show you something?
Sure.
This is a book that I got some time ago. It's backwards, you know, showing it to you, but it's Artifacts. And this is really neat because it's got a million different ideas for different ways to make marks or whatever you want to call it. But, you know, like a lot of the things that you talked about, but it's written by a lady from Australia, I think. But I couldn't believe all the different ways that you can, you know, make beautiful pictures. Because I forget, she's got ink, watercolor, acrylics, oils, pastels, plus all the different unusual materials for the different effects. So that was, you know, kind of a helpful thing too, you know, to have something like that, because I think it goes through a lot of the different things that you're talking about. But it really helps me to have something like that as a guide, because I wouldn't remember on my own. Like you can even go to a class and hear about these things, but it's really nice to have that reference. So thank you very much for giving us all of these different authors and book titles.
And I think the other option is if there's someone locally and you enjoy their work, things that you've seen from the Sooke show, a lot of people have classes, one-on-one classes, and you can study with them. So I'd encourage that as well if that's something that interests you.
Yeah.
Actually, if I can jump in for a moment, the Sooke Arts Council is just opening up their own studio in the next little bit. It may be open within this week, and they're going to be offering classes by local artists. I know that Linda Anderson is one that's already signed up to teach classes through that. It's right next to Jenny's restaurant at the corner of Church Road there. So that's a kind of exciting thing that we're having that sit down. So yeah.
Okay. So let's go to the presentation, and then I picked those out for 2 reasons. One of them is to choose something that I'm passionate about, and one is going on pilgrimages to the island of Iona in Scotland, where I've been 4 times, and showing you different kinds of work or different ways of working. And so do you want to know about the materials? Do you want to know about the stories? What kind of interests you?
All of it.
both. Yeah.
Well, keeping in mind we have about 20 minutes left, that's okay. Yeah. Or we can also go a little longer if you're both still interested in.
You just get started. And so I did a series a while back that was called Wheels of Time. And so it happened as a result of walking past a monument that was a Celtic cross. And when I went to Scotland, I was going up the Rhine and went to Strasbourg Cathedral and saw a beautiful rose window. And then when I left there, I went to the Scotland, and it rained for 100 days in Scotland. And the moment I walked past this memorial, Celtic cross, the sun beamed on the back, and I had this notion of doing a painting, superimposing the sun, the Celtic cross, the rose window. So this was one of the series. And yeah, so it's the sun is in the background. I superimposed the Celtic cross and the rose window on it and did a series. So that's one of the series. So I sometimes like to work in series and sometimes single artworks. And I work in canvas board, cradle board, and many different kinds of paper. So next. So that just talks about Iona. And so this is an example of touch drawing. And it's where I use the water mixable oils and draw with my hands. And it's lovely because you don't know what's on the other side of the paper, and then you pull the paper off the board, and then you can work into it with other media, or you can just leave it as is. And I just love this whimsical character that appeared spontaneously. This was a 3 feet by 4 feet piece. There was an underpainting done with that, and these were supposed to be representing the stones in Scotland. On the island of Iona, each bay has different types of geology, and so that's what that painting was. So that's a mixed media painting. There's watercolor, acrylic, and charcoal. This was a competitive plein air painting in Qualicum at the old schoolhouse. Every year they have a paint out where you randomly go to a site and you paint. And this, my site was outside a restaurant, and there's 2 figures that you can see there in the front, and they were outside, sitting outside, and all the other figures were behind the window inside the restaurant. So this again is mixed media as well. So I only had a defined period of time to do this painting, and sometimes that's energizing for me, knowing that I've got this amount of time and I'm very focused and work really, really hard and really fast. Next. Drawing. As I say, I encourage you to draw, draw, draw. I developed using more sketchbooks lately because I've been looking after my mother or helping her, and to do a large painting and then to be interrupted, I found it really hard to get back to the large painting, but a sketchbook size was manageable. And this is the type of automatic drawing or unconscious drawing where I just start in the left-hand corner and just keep moving my pencil. This is what happened. And then I find what happens is imagery appears that relates to what's going on in my life, or what's gone on in my past, or whatever. This is a watercolor done in front of my home and studio in Cowichan. And it's a Cowichan First Nations people fishing in the estuary. And I use 2 techniques, so wet on wet, where you wet the paper, and also let it dry and then paint on dry paper. More drawings, and this represents Fingal's Cave in Scotland, where a lot of the romantic poets and authors would go for inspiration. Yeah, so that's just an imaginary drawing. This is a watercolor. When I was on Iona, a woman sang, and when she sang, I started to get visualizations for 7 nights. And I'd see a geometric shape and a color, and then I'd get up in the morning and sit at a little table that overlooked the Iona Abbey and a field with sheep and cows, and a little ferry that would go back and forth across from Mull. And this one was called, can't remember what I called it, The Wings of Iona. And so there was a poppy in the background because I saw a blue poppy for the first time. I love irises that were along the rivulets in the spring, and there's lots and lots of rainbows there. And I walked the labyrinth many times, so that's why the words came. Next. So this is going from drawing to tracing to watercolor. So sometimes you can do repetitions of images and symbols. And so this was after this woman sang, and this is the visualization that I got. And I didn't do this piece until I came back to Canada a couple of years later, actually. So I saw these figures in the front, and they went up the sides, and it was a cathedral shape at the top. So and there's that wonderful cave called Fingal's Cave on the island of Staffa. And the waves rush in, and good old Felix Mendelssohn was inspired to write the Hebridean Overture. I don't know whether you're familiar with that symphony. So he wrote music, and also he was also an artist, which was new to me. I didn't realize he painted beautiful watercolors. And everything on Iona is very peaceful, and the cows are peaceful and the sheep are peaceful, and it's very peaceful there. You don't have any cars, and you can walk the whole island if you want to. And that's the Iona Abbey, which is being built and plundered and rebuilt. And there's this long history with Vikings coming, and then during the Reformation, and kings and well-known people were buried on the island of Iona. It's good. And this is Columba Bay, where a monk from Ireland left Ireland and came to this bay, and they believe that he may have also worked on the Book of Kells, the scrolls that are in Ireland, and did some of the work on Iona. This is a technique, or I don't know whether any of you are familiar with anthroposophy or Waldorf's teaching. It's a way of painting called veil painting. It's a very beautiful, sensitive way of working. And what you do is you go from lightness in the center to darkness on the edge, and you layer the colors, and then you wait for images to appear. And when you start to see the images, then you bring them out, and decide whether it's going to be a vertical or horizontal picture. So this is myself in a cave, imagining I'm in a cave, lighting the cave, and I felt the presence of a figure. And then when I was painting this painting, I had a dream, and it said the answer to your puzzle is the word rock, and it jolted me awake. So the next day I went and put a rock in the hand of the figure that was gesturing forward with one hand and to the side, and then the rock ignited, and I realized that this was my birth story and my connection to my grandmother. Anyway, there's a whole lot of more information, but that's probably enough unless you have questions. So you can see that layering the color creates an ethereal view. And this is another touch drawing with my hands with the oil painting. And this is another veil painting going from lightness in the center out to darkness on the outer edge. I just think they're very beautiful. This is an abstract piece where I'm removing paint. So you can see I used a brush or I don't know whether I used a toothpick or I used a chopstick to remove some of the paint and draw with that. Yeah. Oh, that's a bird that's on the island of Iona. When I was there were many people running around with cameras looking for the corncrake. And I wondered what they were doing. And they say it's a bird that lives there, but it's you rarely see it. And I thought they were actually teasing me and telling me a yarn or a myth. But indeed, there are the corncrakes, and the farmers are paid so that they don't use the fields during the time that these birds nest there. And they're from Africa. And I think there's some in China, but they, one night when I was walking back in June, one of the corncrakes swished above me. And so I got a glimpse of what a corncrake was. They're the size of a chicken, have long legs. And this is my interpretation of the flight of the corncrake using the veil painting style. Is this interesting or not? I don't know how much.
Very interesting. I love the variety. Yeah. So much variety here.
Yeah,
this is
absolutely.
Another veil painting. And a woman came for tea one day and told the story about grief, love, loss, and overcoming it. And so I thought that's what the painting was about. I exhibit this painting in Portland, Oregon. Not Portland. Yeah, it was Portland. No, it was Ashland, Oregon. And this woman came up to me, whom I didn't know, and said, that's a detached retina. That's the retinal surgery that you've depicted there. And I looked at her and I said, really? And she said, yes, I'm a retired ophthalmologist and I like to paint. And that's what that's about. So the strange thing was I did have a detached retina and general surgery and laser surgery after that for a detached retina. So I don't know whether I was working through that or whether it's about the story of having tea with the other woman. So it can be whatever you want it to be. So this just basically to show you drawings and then show you the touch drawings and then showing the veil paintings. And again, that's another veil painting done when I was on Iona the 7 days in a row, where I saw a square that had peachy colors in it and then didn't know what the rest of it was going to be. So on the left is the story about Findhorn, on the right is Glastonbury, and this is Iona, and there's slender threads of connection written by an author, and I love that phrase.
So what is this watercolor?
It is.
Okay.
And with pen and ink on top.
Right. Yeah, I can see the pen and ink.
It's lovely.
Yeah. And what kind of paper? Is it watercolor paper or is it something else? Okay.
Watercolor. Yeah.
That's lovely. It really is.
Yeah. That's something you could look at for a really long time.
Yes. Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah, I love that.
Again, this is an imaginary drawing that I did that I translated into a painting, and it's watercolor. And this is a mixed media painting acrylic, and it's called The Three Monks of Iona. So you can see doves and Celtic crosses and monks. And this is another touch drawing done after a meditation. There's the Staff Fingal's cave again, approaching it.
Wow.
This painting's fun because it can be viewed from many different ways. So it tells the story about Sleeping Beauty in the enchanted forest. And then if you turn it to the other side, it's a dove leaving the forest. So I did this painting in memory of my father, who used to, as a child, read a story, Sleeping Beauty, and then when he passed away. So it's using pencils, acrylic paint, and different kinds of materials, and lifting off. This is a watercolor, just done in nature, a plein air painting. I think that's what's wonderful about creativity and art making, is there's so many possibilities, and really you'll have your own signature about whether you like light pressure or heavy pressure, or whether you like them detail or not detail, whether you like to use specific colors. So for me, as I have evolved as an artist, I used to love blues and purples when I first started. And then I started evolving, and I started doing portraits actually as a teenager. And then I studied with Plato Ustinov, who was Peter Ustinov's uncle. And I studied with Murray MacDonald, who taught at the Banff School of Fine Arts in the University of Alberta in my teens, and learned portrait painting and landscape painting from them, and particularly using watercolors. And what was I going to say? What was my point with that? So the important thing is that there's so many different ways of doing things, and the evolution for me is I started doing landscapes, I started doing people within their environments, and then I started to do more mixed media. And so I love to do photography, I love to sculpt, I love to paint, and do a variety of things too. For me, the subject matter dictates what material or medium I use, and that's how come I paint in many different ways. That's good. So there's lots of examples of these more ethereal paintings, but this is collaging. So if you don't have any ideas, sometimes just getting magazines and cutting out images and pictures and then putting them together and then drawing that and then doing a painting from it sometimes helps in terms of your process and ideas. So that's what I did in this one.
Sorry.
You left? And this was I had a show at the Christchurch Cathedral with the theme of Iona, and I was sitting in that environment and doing touch drawings. You get lovely textures with that. And this is a photograph that I took, and I often do oils on photographs as well. And so this is an oil painting on photograph.
I remember that.
Live.
Yeah, you too.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Last year.
Mm-hmm. So we're getting close to the end. Do you have any questions or comments or anything else that you'd like to share before we conclude today? Because it's almost 3 o'clock.
No, I just want to thank you. I found this really, really informative and quite helpful. And I'm kind of looking forward to, getting on with it.
Yes, ditto. I feel the same. Yeah, it was very inspiring. And I love the variety of your work and the different techniques and everything. And I like the serendipity things that, you don't know what it's going to look like until you've got something and then you make something of it, Just that vision, having that vision.
So if you want to chime in tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I'll be talking about underpaintings with charcoal and smoke.
Oh,
okay. So you'll learn a few other techniques or ways of working.
Okay.
Great.
Well,
thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you so much,
Very
Catherine.
enjoyable.
Yeah, it was, I learned a whole lot too, and I find it's really inspiring just to listen to other people and find out where they get their ideas from and how they do, and the struggles too. I appreciate that there's times where you just sit and don't know what you're doing or how to get started or doing anything like that. So I really appreciate that you brought some light into that area for us. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
I think that there's always our inner critic who will dissuade you from doing what you're doing, and to just let that pass through. And then when you do that, it helps move forward as well. Yeah. So thank you for participating and being part of this presentation today. And I look forward to having further conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Right. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.